Dynamic space operations for modern national security challenges. And now, your moderator, Steve Jakes.
I guess that's me. Well, let's see. Good morning, folks. Thanks, everybody, for stopping by. And welcome to today's, what I like to call, Showtime on the Red Wire stage.
Yes.
Absolutely. So today, let's have a conversation about what's called dynamic space operations for modern national security challenges, otherwise known as, ready for it, space superiority, counter space, offensive and defensive, space mobility, maneuverability, refueling. You kind of get the idea? Stuff that we typically have not talked about a lot in the public domain. And we're doing it today, which is good, and our leadership is doing it today as well, which means a lot. So just so you all know, up front, we're going to fix all these challenges. We're going to get it all done in about 45 minutes. You all ready for it?
Absolutely.
All right, let's go with it. So looking at this crowd here, some of you might remember the Donald Rumsfeld Space Commission some 25 years ago. I see some heads nodding. I see some young folks that might have been born around that time. That's quite all right. You know, that happened about 25 years ago, with space being, you know, in some people's minds, a peaceful sanctuary. Can you imagine that? A peaceful sanctuary in space. Members of Congress would say some of that from time to time. So as you might imagine, the outcome of the Space Commission, they made some headlines at the time. They then warned that the United States may someday encounter with a thing called a Pearl Harbor in space. That made the news. That was 25 years ago. So fast forward to today. Over the years, we've been hearing a steady stream of messaging coming from our national leadership. Let's talk about some of the great quotes that General Chance Saltzman, Chief of Space Operations, has been saying lately, and overtly and routinely and often. He explains that the goal of the theory of success is to maximize the Space Force's contribution to integrated deterrence and to deter a crisis and conflict from extending into space. Domain control is the special province of warfighters, a unique responsibility that only military services hold. He says, you know, it's a thing that distinguishes the Navy from the merchant marine. And he said it distinguishes the Space Force from, he said it, Southwest Airlines. His words. But you get the idea. But importantly, he said it's the purpose of the Space Force to achieve space superiority. Words that in the past typically were not stated publicly. So put simply, continuing some of his quotes, space control encapsulates the mission areas required to contest, control the space domain, employing kinetic and non-kinetic means to affect adversary capabilities by disruption, degradation, and destruction if necessary. Space control, he says, includes things like orbital warfare, electronic warfare, counter-space operations that can be employed for offensive and defensive purposes. He acknowledged the Space Force does not always discuss space control openly, but he says now is the time to do that. And that's what he is doing on a daily basis. So we commend him for saying that. Continuing, he says, well, why would you have a military space service if not to execute space control? If we're going to truly embrace our status as space warfighters, we need to also embrace our fundamental responsibility for space control. So there's not been a war in space, he says, which means there are no guardians with space combat experience. Another important point. However, readiness for a future fight is still the top priority for space war fighters. We need to sharpen every one of the components of readiness: personnel training, equipment, and sustainment. If one of these elements is lacking, then our readiness as a whole is impacted. He does acknowledge the Space Force doesn't yet have all the best training tools available to make those things happen, and for those that need them. So the service is still in the process of acquiring all those simulators and training capabilities it needs. So meanwhile, what's going on through all this time? We have China, we have Russia. You know the story. They continue to rapidly advance their own versions, what we'll call their version of space dynamics in operations. entails sophisticated on-orbit operations such as maneuver, concealment, and deception. Is anyone surprised about that? They're displaying the same coercive and provocative behavior in other domains, so why wouldn't they do that in space? So remember the Rumsfeld Commission once again. They warned the space environment is a military environment. And again, when were those warnings stated? 25 years ago. So those additional steps need to be taken now to enable the DSO concept and rapidly demonstrate its practical application in an increasingly contested environment. And time is definitely of the essence. So today, we'll have a discussion on this important topic to include where the panel feels we stand today relative to the DSO concept, what might be underway in an operational and programmatic context to include and not be limited to space domain awareness, which is the art of the possible, what is the art of the possible from a technical standpoint and the like. So with that in mind, I'm pleased to kick this off by introducing to you our esteemed panel of experts. From my immediate left, Dr. Seth Lacey, who is the Senior Scientist for Space Mobility and Precision Maneuver at the Air Force Research Lab. Dr. Colonel, not doctor anyway, right? Owen Stevens, who's the Director of Contracting for the Space Rapid Capabilities Office, or SPARCO. We have Ms. Deidre Walsh, who's the Executive Vice President for Strategy and Government Affairs at the ARCA Group, but a senior executive coming out of the intelligence community in her government career. And finally, retired Air Force Colonel Dean Bellamy, who I think a lot of you folks know, who's the Executive Vice President of National Security at Redwire, the host of this panel and the stage. So thank you for putting this all together. So now I'll turn the stage over to our esteemed panelists. I'll later tee up a few questions for them to answer. And I think we may have a remote microphone around here somewhere if there's time for you folks to offer some thoughts. Okay, very good. The good gentleman with the microphone will kind of go from there. So from that point, Dr. Lacey, sir, over to you.
Thank you very much. I would like to start off with dynamic space operations. I think of it as maneuver is the problem. Mm-hmm. Maneuver is the dominant thing that we do in all the other domains, and it will be true in space as well. Delta V is of course king. On the defense side of the house, as opposed to civil or commercial, time has a different flavor for the defense community. So there's a high thrust component that's required in the defense side, and achieving that high delta V, high maneuver, both on the day-to-day life and high capacity for responsive maneuver when required.
Okay, I'm Owen Stevens. First, I should warn you, I'm not actually a typical contracting person. 35 years in counting, a third of my career in aircraft maintenance, a third of my career in program management, a fourth of my career in contracting, and then a little bit doing other things. So I say that to say that I tend to view the world through the lens of my beloved fixed-wing fighters, who have been dealing with the air domain as a warfighting domain for decades, right? There's a lot to learn there. I'm going to add an M to his M, maneuver and mass. So he mentioned Pearl Harbor. So I was thinking this morning, he had told us he was going to mention Pearl Harbor. I was thinking this morning that y'all ever seen that little article that says everything I learned about living I learned in kindergarten or something like that, right? So I would say everything we need to learn about war we probably learned in World War II, right? How do you fight against a peer adversary? And while technology is important, in that particular case, Germany had us outclassed in a couple different areas for technology. We won it through mass and maneuver and logistics. That is how we won that war. And now we face a different challenge, but also with a peer adversary who, like us in World War II, for all practical purposes, has a nearly infinite ability to produce things. And so that is kind of the way that I have been viewing the world. Dynamic space operations is a lot of things to a lot of different people. I was talking to Dean a couple of months ago. You can have a dynamic system with static objects, right, with data flowing back and forth. You can have a dynamic system with dynamic data and dynamic non-static objects. We actually want both in the Space Rapid Capabilities Office. We're charged with building systems to protect and defend in the space domain. And you don't do that by just sitting around, right? That is not how we will accomplish that. So yes, we want Delta V. Refueling, does the math ever make sense? I'm not sure, but refueling would be a nice thing if we get it. But the ability to maneuver without regretting that you just had to maneuver, basically. And this goes to General Saltzman talking about scarcity, right? Right now, the Space Force views maneuver in space as a scarce resource, and we need to overcome that particular barrier. And I will now turn it over to you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Deirdre Walsh. I'm Executive Vice President at ARCA Group. I do our strategy and GR. As Steve mentioned, I spent a long career in the intelligence community, so I bring a little bit of a different flavor of this conversation. You will not hear me use terms like Delta V or maneuverability. That's a little bit out of my depth, but bringing the intelligence community perspective to this is an important facet of the conversation around how we view space, how we use space, and how the team sport that is protection of the nation between both the active military and the IC is critical to going forward. So I'm happy to share those comments with my good friend Dean and the rest of the panel. But this is a very exciting time. And as every good intelligence officer would say, you start with what the threat is, and we know what the threats are, and they are not getting any easier. So, I can't say it any better than everyone that's spoken at this conference all week about the challenges that we face, and it's incumbent upon us as an industry, as the military, and to sharpen that focus and make sure we've got what we need to fight those future wars, which I think we all know are going to happen in space. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation. Look forward to a fun conversation.
Absolutely. Thanks, Deidre. Thanks, Colonel Stevens. Thanks, Dr. Lacey. And Steve, thanks as well. At Redwire, we're not just talking about dynamic space operations. We're actually building capabilities for that. And I want to kind of talk through that a little bit. So we're building our Mako spacecraft. Yes, I said Mako like the sharks. We named our spacecraft after sharks. Who doesn't love a Mako? It's one of the fastest, most maneuverable sharks in the ocean. And we're looking at sustained maneuver operations. So we are looking at how do you do high delta V, how you do maneuverability. We're looking at acceleration, right? If you think of some of our EVs today, they have fast acceleration. There's going to be some instances where you need that. We also are proud to be working with both SSC and AFRL on Tetra 5 and Tetra 6. They're both refueling missions. So if you're not familiar with that, we're integrating the Orbit Fab actually port. There's a port where you receive the input from, like if you are next to a KC-135 and it extends the boom if you're an aircraft person. And so we're actually going to be going up with SSC next year under Colonel Joe Roth, and actually doing some demos as a part of the refueling demos. So we look at it as a hybrid architecture where you need a little bit of everything, but we're excited to be in this conversation and look forward to more conversations about it, Steve.
Hello, here we go. Well, let's go to a few questions now. And some questions are sort of designed on the military side of things, and some are more broad. So as dynamic space operations is happening, let's have a dynamic conversation, okay? So people pipe up as you wish, because everyone has an opinion, and anything you want to say, let's have a little fun with it. So a couple categories here. This first category, we'll talk about deterrence and posture. So within that context, the thought is, how do we message dynamic space capabilities to support deterrence without revealing sensitive ops or tactics? Nice, easy topic.
Well, Steve, can I jump on that one first? Is that okay? Look, I see some of my friends out in the audience are some of the best weapon and tactics Space Force Guardians, and they need the ability to actually demonstrate and train. And you talked about TTPs and training, because we've got a lot of Guardians who've grown up in an environment that was a really peaceful domain. We've got to teach them if they're threatened or something reckless or provocative happens, how to actually act and build those procedures so that we can ensure that not only are we protecting our space assets, but we're providing the sailors, the soldiers, the Marines, the airmen, and the people on the ground the capabilities they need from space. So we have to train, and so I think we do what we always talk about. You got to train like you're going to fight, and so I think we're going to have to demonstrate it. We're going to have to prove out these concepts because it's the only thing we owe that to the Guardians, and I think that's what we're going to have to do.
I think I would like to talk about deterrence in depth, right? Not everything needs to be classified, right? Again, through the lens of my beloved aircraft, an A-10, is there anybody anywhere in the world that will mistake the intent of an A-10? It is an airplane built around a cannon, right? It is designed to absolutely destroy things, and in a specific set of missions, right? And then we have other airplanes who also it's pretty evident what they're going to do. Like you've got fixed wing fighters, you got bombers or whatever. And then there's the secret stuff that we don't reveal until we actually use them. So if you remember in, wow, I'm dating myself, but Desert Storm, who remembers the really, really cool airplane that bombed downtown Baghdad, right? Nobody in the world knew that thing existed until we started doing very precise strikes in Baghdad in Desert Storm, and then after it was over, they did the reveal at Nellis, had a big ceremony or whatever. And so you do this by doing it in depth with layers, right? If the enemy does not realize that we can destroy things, they're not going to be very deterred. There's no deterrence effect there. So you want to have things where it's evident that we can rain death and destruction upon whatever it is we're talking about. And then you're gonna work your way to those very, very special niche things that we do protect until we reveal them because we used them, in part because they might lose some of their effect if they're revealed prematurely, right? So this is a case where I'll go back to the other M word, the mass word. We need layered capabilities that some of which overtly deter simply because it's obvious that they will kill you, all the way down to the special secret stuff that we only reveal when we need to. So I think that it would be the way I would look at it.
I'd like to piggyback on that a little bit. I think that there's a big value in logistics as deterrence. So we win in all the other domains because we have the best logistics supply chain management for getting force where we need it when we need it. I think that's going to be true in space as well, and which is both on the ground and getting things to launch and the launch enterprise. That's a big part of it. I think the in-space portion is still immature, and we're working on that. Refueling, I think, is an obvious case there that if we can deliver fuel where it's needed and be persistent in the domain, I think that's a huge advantage. And showing that capability, showing that logistics, I think is both an opportunity to bring in our allies and partners from industry, but also deter conflict writ large, because people look at us and say, like, okay, look, they can be maneuverable forever because they had this huge advantage in their logistics.
Can I piggyback again? Yes, in World War II, we built over 18,000 B-24 Liberators. When World War II finished, we had thousands sitting in crates littered all over the theater that we didn't need to use because of logistics, right? And we did the same thing with the P-51 Mustang, like 15,000 or probably more than that. P-51 Mustangs, logistics, yes, absolutely.
And I would say, even from an industry perspective, but also from a projection of power, just deploying capability regularly, showing a commitment to the mission, and a commitment to investing in this mission. I mean, we I mean, we're here at a conference where there's a lot of investors who are interested in what we're doing as well, but I think there's showing that commitment as an unwavering recognition of this is where the future of warfighting is going is critically important, just at the highest level, to say there will be funding there, there will be, the Space Force as a function, just the spotlight on that and showing the American people this is where we're going, this is what we need in order to be competitive and stay ahead in the future. Just saying that out loud, I think, is another big part of deterrence.
Exactly. Dean, anything else?
No, I think I agree with all my colleagues here, and definitely agree on the logistics part. A lot of times when you look at World War II, right, on the air side of the house, it was a game changer, right? And I think, but training our operators for this and actually preparing for it is so critical.
Okay, I'm going to have one closing question. It's sort of been a little redundant with what we've been talking about, but I'm thinking, so looking ahead, how should the U.S. space enterprise posture itself overtly? Maybe in words, Colonel Stevens, you mentioned classification. There's a lot of examples, but in the category of posturing ourselves to help to deter those threats, maintain the freedom of action in space, what kind of approaches, tactics might we want to undertake as a nation?
All right, so I'm going to go back to mass again. One of the ways that I think we need to change, not just Space Force, like we, the grand we, need to change. And it's going to be hard. So we spent like decades creating an environment and culture where it takes a really, really long time to develop something, build something, and then field something, and a lot of money, like mind-boggling amounts of money. That falls apart. That is not the way. That is not the path to success. Money is a limited resource, scarce. And if you pay, $300 million for a single thing as a piece of combat capability, that is a path to failure. And so the whole ecosystem needs to change the posture for a different world. And part of that is, we can use the B-24s, like not an exquisite piece of warfighting capability. It didn't cost, the GDP of a small nation to develop it, and then we handed the plans to several manufacturers in the country, and they just pumped them out like nobody's business at affordable prices. Space can do that too. You have to be thoughtful about what you want, but everything you need to be able to provide a deterrent effect and combat capability when you need it already exists in the ecosystem. The problem is we've built an environment where it's become unavailable to us. One of the reasons that we're so interested in the Space RCO in a different population of companies is because we're trying to get out of that Cold War mentality where you spend $33 billion to develop an airplane, right? That is not what we want. We want to be much more modest. And so I think that is one of the ways you posture, because you never get mass if every single thing you buy costs that much money. You will never accomplish mass that way.
Colonel Stevens, I agree. And I really think for success is this innovation and prototyping and maturing and evolving and doing that kind of spiral, kind of incremental, really prototyping is key to not have these bloated, $30 billion programs. And it's also success. So I'm a huge proponent of we need to put money into S&T for this innovation prototyping and move forward. But for modular capabilities, because what I heard you talking about was really modular capabilities.
Let him do his thing, right, in the labs. Let him do his thing to mature the stuff, affordable stuff, and then we mass produce it, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and we invest in component tech and very exciting new capabilities. We also invest in manufacturing tech, and so we have an entire directorate in AFRL devoted to materials and manufacturing to help move that forward. And we're looking at how can we increase that production capacity to produce space capability at scale. There's another thread to that too, which the launch enterprise is going to have to scale up to deploy that mass as well. We've done great with the launch capacity that we started over 50 years ago, but we need to really grow that capacity, and that's going to be one of the big instruments of deploying space power is that ability to get mass into orbit routinely at scale.
Right.
Can I add one more thing?
One more time. Greg, you bet.
Yeah, just to jump in because of what Dr. Lacey was saying. So you were asking about the original question, right? Prioritizations, and are we overtly
Right.
for space superiority talking about it? I actually think if you look at the prioritization, I think both General Whiting and General Saltzman are definitely out there. If you're not watching it, they're on multiple ways talking about the priorities, and I think that's great. But I also want to say that we're actually seeing the demonstration at the colonel level, at the directorate level. From we're proud to be on a program at DARPA called DARPA Otter, where we're looking at different capabilities at different orbits. And I really want to say we are seeing rubber hitting the road with people putting money towards programs, and I want to make sure they're getting the credit that we are seeing programs being developed, and it's not just talk or rhetoric at the 4-star level. We're seeing people that are actually doing work.
Okay, let's switch over into the category of doctrine and lexicon and mindset, if you will. We hear General Saltzman's quotes. Basically he keeps asking, what does it mean for Howie domain? We have to have a military space, if not to execute space control. So with that in mind, is there any kind of a need for any kind of updated doctrinal considerations, lexicon, reflecting the
Actually,
real
I think we
realities?
just got that, didn't we? Just recently issued a new. Yeah, the answer is yes.
Yep.
And they have done it. I'm sure it will evolve, right? But absolutely, I would say that the Space Force needs to not think they need to invent everything from whole cloth, though. Right. I think there are analogies in other warfighting domains that apply. I mentioned this morning, there's a reason that we all, like if you study the strategy of war, you still read Clausewitz, right? Over a century dated, the air domain didn't even exist. The space domain certainly didn't exist. Modern mechanized warfare didn't exist, and yet we still study Clausewitz. We still study Thucydides. We still study Sun Tzu. Why is that? Because there are some fundamental truths about warfighting as a strategy and a doctrine.
Very true. And, to take your analogy, not only with Clausewitz, but also air and World War II, let's talk maritime. If you look at...
I don't recommend Thucydides. It is hard to chew through.
Absolutely. But if you look at maritime as another example, when we saw the sail, we had all the technology kind of maximized with sail, and we transitioned to steam and brought new technologies in with steam, not only militarily, economically, but technology. It was a game changer for military or maritime military power. And I think you're going to see that with Space Force Doctrine 1 and more coming out with new technologies. You're going to see that same impact. I think we'll look back 5, 10, 15 years from now and see the same impact I think we saw on the maritime side or on the air side, we're going to start seeing on the space warfighting side.
So let's jump into readiness and training. Let's talk hardcore as to where we stand today and what the art of the possible is in the future. General Saltzman continues to emphasize that the top priority for Guardians is training for Guardians. While maybe not in your official job jars, what's your sense on how things are going, what the vision is, what the objectives are, and kind of where we stand looking forward? Another softball question.
We invest in technologies for satellite command and control, ground systems, user interfaces, and we collaborate with STARCOM on training our upcoming warfighters on how to operate these systems. We get good feedback from them on this works, this doesn't work, this is terrific, that's a terrible idea. So we get good feedback that way, and we're building that demand signal. So when they go off to go fly, GPS spacecraft, and they experience the user interface and that operations paradigm there, they can look back and they can say, I think I have some ideas about what I can help make this better. So, we're trying to seed the market that way a little bit. I think on the training of the warfighters for maneuver, we have a long way to go there. We do a lot of work with, both on the S&T side and collaborating with our professional operators to learn how to do rendezvous and proximity operations and some pretty dynamic maneuvers. It's few and far between when they get to do that for real, and that's because of that sense of scarcity of maneuver, where there's this great thing you could go try. We're going to do it in the sim, and never try it in space for real, because it uses so much delta V, uses so much gas. That it's expensive and perceived as life limiting. So getting past that, which requires that we build that logistics, that supply chain to do refueling and provide that persistent maneuver in space, will make our training enterprise more robust and more realistic.
If I can, just happened to be close to seeing what STARCOM is doing under General Shaba with their officer training course. And I will tell you, there's a lot going on that you may or may not be aware of. But really, I want to give a shout out to STARCOM and the work they're doing, training all these new lieutenants.
Exactly.
And there's so many prior military and veterans. They're in there every day teaching them and ingraining with them. And I'm so encouraged that I know 5, 10, 20 years from now, they're going to be the leaders and the next generation leaders, and they're learning so much today. And if it wasn't for the integrated mission deltas and the priorities that General Saltzman has put in place with that and STARCOM, I think it's going to be a game changer for Space Force.
I think space offers a fairly unique opportunity for warfighting readiness. So back when I was 18, the Air Force taught me how to use an M16. And they made me relearn that like every year. Like I had to go qualify. Somewhere along the way, we forgot about that, and nobody wants me to shoot an M16 now. You do the same thing like with the Army driving a tank. You do the same thing with pilot vehicle interface. The matchup of the human and the machine is very pivotal. Space offers a unique opportunity because the matchup of the human and the machine is a computer sitting on the ground here on Earth. And the physics involved are very, very well known, right? We know how to do orbital dynamics. And so we actually have, I think, the unique opportunity to be able to provide very, very realistic training without having to expend resources that we view as scarce, and actually have it be very realistic training that makes us ready, so that when we actually do go to expend the resources, like we're all over that, right? And so that is a unique thing that you get from a separation from the person to the machine. So anyway.
Absolutely, and the modern sim capabilities out there today, to train people for the different techniques, it's really incredible, right?
Good to hear. Thanks for all that. We'll switch gears a little bit of overlap here in what we're talking about, but getting into the category of operational execution and technology. I'm going to toss a couple of softballs at you in a bundle. How about that, okay? Do you feel that we're on the right track from an acquisition and contracting perspective? The models, are they there to enable speed, capability in a contested domain? How do you see, we've talked a little bit about on-orbit refueling already, but how about AI when you put that into the mix? Autonomous systems, and what are some of the key operational and technical challenges that we still see that need to be addressed today to achieve that true flexibility and responsiveness in space? Another softball.
I feel like at least one of those softballs was like aimed right at me.
Yeah.
But you were
looking
nodding
right at you.
You were nodding your head. So why don't you go first?
Well, I was just going to mention that I think some of the technologies, they're not necessarily specific to this mission set. You know, the things that we really need to be investing in. The, you know, the cyber, like some of the cyber threats that we face, that's an area that we really need to be paying a lot of attention to, and not forget that, you know, the data's got to come somewhere. It's got to be, you got to have fidelity in it. You got to believe in it, and you got to secure it. So, just kind of how that marriage between cyber and space continues, you know, regardless of the mission. So I think that's an area of investment and focus that we shouldn't forget about. We're really good about focusing on the hardware and all of the hard challenges, because those are super fun, but the data's got to be able to move, and it's got to be able to get to where it needs to be, and people have to be able to trust it. So that's what came to mind when Steve was reading off the many technologies that we might need to be thinking through as we kind of take on this mission going forward.
And if I can with Deidre, kind of do a little play here. On the contracting side, everybody wants to talk contracting and government. How about we talk on the industry side? One of the things we're doing as partners is we're not waiting for serial things and, you know, you get a contract, then you flow it down, We're very interactive. We're actually looking at very agile ways we can speed up contracting on our side, on the industry side. And I think it's important that we stay agile on the industry side so we can give the best capabilities, firm fixed price contracts on the variety of things to the government. So I think as much as people want to point fingers at the government, 3 fingers come back to industry. We've got to change, we've got to modify, we've got to be better.
I don't think anybody would ever say the government's fast enough when it comes to acquisition, and there's been every 5 years there's a review that says acquisition needs fixing. And if I had a magic wand, I would say, yeah, that would be the one thing I'd want to fix right away, is how do we make things happen faster and you know, streamline those policies and streamline those processes and use creative contracting vehicles like we're doing more now, and push that like on steroids into the future. Because like I was saying before, deploying capability, just getting it up there and showing what we can do to our adversary is a big part of fighting this fight.
You know, I want to throw in a little message to our industry friends who are here and online watching. This is an open invitation. Our customers need our inputs. Leave your logos at the door. Come in with ideas that you feel help to fix the mission challenges we have out there. They need our help. Some of us have been in the business longer than they've been in. A lot of us are older than them. A lot of us have done their jobs in the past, okay? They learn on the fly like we did when we were 20 years younger.
And Steve, I also want to give a shout out to you at the organization NSSA. If they do a tremendous job really advocating and working with the government to actually break down barriers and challenges. If you are a member of NSSA, keep supporting. If you're not, you really need to
come join. There's room in the inn. Thank you.
Go Stevens. I actually think that we're capable of better acquisition without the need of that much reform. We very rarely in the Space Rapid Capabilities Office take longer than about, 6 months to go from I want this thing to I am on contract trying to build this thing. The only magic wand we have is we're JSIDS exempt. Does everybody know what JSIDS is? Joint? I don't.
Absolutely.
What is
Joint
JSIDS?
Integrated Capabilities Doctrine.
Yeah. Anyway, it's the official Joint Staff way of generating a requirements document, which can take a really long time. I think one of the things that needs to happen that currently the government doesn't do that well. Has anybody ever had a discussion with an engineer, so sorry, and said, I want something really, really cool. I'm not exactly sure what that cool thing is, but it kind of looks like this. Would you spend 2 weeks imagining the most complex thing that you could actually come up with?
And make it modular.
And do it fast.
No challenge.
And common interfaces and standards?
Somewhere along the way, the government, A, got sloppy about requirements, and B, just started trying to bite off more than is reasonably capable of being done in a short amount of time, in a reasonable amount of time with a reasonable amount of money. We don't know how to do that.
I think that's a big challenge. I think we're seeing a lot of success in trying to integrate between operations, acquisitions, and S&T, and bringing those communities together. It feels a little bit like we're making a new stovepipe. However, this doesn't make sense for everything, but for problems where you're like, all right, I actually see the kind of mission I want to go after, that can bring a lot of benefit, because you can do things where you're like, all right, S&T can say, all right, here's what's feasible today, here's what will be feasible in a year or 5 years, and start feeding that back up into acquisitions. You can say, okay, I'm going to bite out this piece.
But you do that
now.
outside of the program of record, right? You do that as a parallel path. If you do it in a program of record, it just slows everything down.
Yeah, and bringing the teams together, but trying to make sure that we don't hand off like, okay, we built a tech, and in 5 years it'll be TRL6 and off it goes. That handing it over the wall rarely works well. Integrating those teams together has been much more effective. And on the operations side as well, where the operator can say, this is okay, but I really wish I had more automation in this area, or streamline something or somewhere else. And then both acquisitions S&T can say, that part's really easy. Let me fix that for you right now. And that's going to take a little more work. We're going to have to put some investment in some new technology that will, so bringing that together in a more integrated fashion can bring some pretty rapid benefits. And we've done it in other domains. So
we have, yes.
Special operations work a little more like this. Big Safari in the air domain works a little more like this. This is not a new idea on under the sun here, but it is not done that well or that pervasively in space, and making that happen is an accelerator.
Yep, but we do know how to do it, right? Does anybody here know what the new technology was on an F-117? The only new technology that existed for that aircraft. It was the stealth. Everything else on that aircraft came off of another airplane, already developed, already done, completely matured. They grabbed the landing gear off an F-18. They grabbed the engines off an F-18. They grabbed the flight controls off an F-16. They had to do new flight control laws because it was wobbly. And then you go look at the F-16, the very first F-16 that was developed, you could throw 2 AIM-9 Sparrows on the wingtips, and that was all you could do. And the last one that rolled off the line in early 90s, like you could hang any kind of ordnance on that you wanted to and just go, really blow some stuff up.
And that's really key, because it was that little, I called it the U-ring for that. It was a standard. Everybody built to that, right? And everybody knew how to interface it. Anybody could build the munitions because you knew how to interface to it. And it actually allowed innovation and lowered costs, by the way. Yes. It was amazing, actually.
Okay, you folks in the audience, you must have some thoughts in your mind. Any kind of questions that anybody might like to ask? Omar has the mic. Okay.
Right up.
Hi there. Colonel, you're absolutely right that we won World War II on industrial might, but it might not have. The 8th Air Force had 75% killed, captured, and wounded. And fortunately, they knocked out the German industrial base. If they'd been able to field MiG-262s at quantity, your beloved B-24s would have been target practice.
Well, that's why we had the P-51s to run escort on them. But you're right, we lost 60 airplanes in one night on the Schweinfurt raid.
Right.
60 airplanes. Can you imagine losing 60 satellites in one night?
Well, that's important, though, because that'd be like a day without space.
That's
right?
a day without space.
Well, in 1982, the Syrians lost 83 MiG-21s in a day and a half, and the Israelis lost 3 F-15s. Okay, so there is a place for quantity, which has a quality all its own, like Lennon said, but certainly technology. The B-2, which I worked, made the Warsaw Pact air defenses, billions of dollars of them, obsolete overnight. A rifling shell made every wooden warship obsolete in the 1860s.
So if I can, I'd love to answer your question. What I heard you say is, for everybody who's listening in the crowd or at home, the adversary threat and the adversary is going to continue to advance. We cannot ignore that. We cannot have our head in the sand. We need to understand that we have to continue to advance. And if you look at General Saltzman's competitive endurance strategy, which was a precursor to Space Force Doctrine Document 1 that just came out, was, we cannot allow first move advantage to the adversary. We've also got to know, we've got to have great space situation awareness and know what the adversary is doing. And I really want to say, when you look at our government colleagues, they're doing a tremendous amount to advance space, and they should be applauded for. They're in the trenches every day. Their entire teams are in the trenches. They're working, 60 hours a week to ensure that the Space Force, we never have a day without space.
And I think you said a very important two words: supply chain. The shoring up the supply chain is critically important to the future of this mission, full stop. We need to have all of the capability we have now and then some. So kind of back to what I said earlier, committed, focused, intentional investment across the industry, from the government, from other sources, just making sure that we can produce quickly, at scale, as necessary, and there are things we may need to respond to, there are things we need to be ahead of, but having a supply chain that's ready, willing, and able to do that is the glue that's going to hold all of this together. So when you said the word supply chain, I'm like, that's exactly right.
So I'll harken back to earlier words I said, layered in depth. I'm not dismissing the idea that there is a need for exquisite. We do need exquisite, but we'll use your B2. How much did it cost? You would bankrupt the nation trying to build enough of those to actually fight a war with them.
The variable cost on a B2 to make a new one was less than a 747. Okay, the numbers that you get for B2 included all of the development cost, all of the Air Force facility costs, everything else that was designed to make 32 a year. And they cut this thing to 20 period, and we made 6 a year.
Yes,
So
and we did the same thing with F-22, and we did the same thing with F-35. Well, have we actually cut the quantities yet?
No, and everybody in the world wants to buy them, so they'll make plenty of F-35s.
They will, but
So there was a case where we tried to build an infrastructure that could crank out 32 B2s a year, getting at your mass quantity, and it should have been designed as a boutique manufacturing approach, and it would have been a fraction of the cost.
Yeah, that's probably true. Yeah.
This is what I love here. We were talking about dynamic space operations, and we have these dynamic dialogues. It's the way we
and
all
now we're on B2s.
roll. This is fantastic.
And don't get me wrong, I love stealth airplanes. I think I was telling somebody the other day, I think I'm the only active duty in uniform Tonopah Test Range F-117 guy left. I think I'm it. We absolutely need things like that.
And we canceled right when the recurring cost was really going down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we did the same thing on F-22, and but layered in depth, right? A whole bunch of non-exquisite stuff, less of stuff that's moving along the exquisite continuum, and then less of the really, really, really fancy stuff. And I think that we might have forgotten that that's the way we've won wars, with the exception, all right, Desert Storm, we just rolled over them, right? We had them on technology, we had them on mass, we just rolled over them. We didn't do that in World War II. We didn't do that every time we've ever fought a peer adversary. We have never had the ability to just roll right over them. And we need to remember that, was my point. But yeah, you're absolutely right.
Well, folks, I'm getting the shepherd's hook signal here coming up. This has been a fun conversation. I say fun, important conversation. The topic is that important that we at NSSA are going to dedicate a full-day forum on this fall. Space superiority is the topic. It'll be a blunt topic called space superiority. So that'll be taking place in the D.C. area in the November timeframe, date to be determined. We're inviting you all to watch our website, nssaspace.org, for all the details. We want to see you all there for sure. In the meantime, I want to just really extend my thanks to you all for being here today. This is outstanding panel that is stirring the pot a little bit, which is exactly what we want to be doing. So thanks to Redwire for doing what you always do so well. You're bringing us all together,
Specifically,
making
thanks
this
to
happen.
Omar for doing all
Omar
the
is
logistics.
the
for
man.
this.
Let's all give Omar a hand. And thank you. A shout out to the panel, too. Thank you, panel. We appreciate it. Let's have a good day. Let's have a good conference. Take care, everybody. Take care.